openhoops.com. Please subscribe to continue receiving all the good content. I want to first apologize to you guys. I said it would take me about a day or two to get to the second part of this podcast, and it took me somewhere around 3 days. So I want to apologize for that. I previously spoke about the comments made about from some analysts about Doc Rivers. That's in the previous podcast, and of course, in this one, I wanted to speak about Scottie Pippen and the comments he made about Michael Jordan. But if I before I do that, similar to the last time, I will touch a little bit on the NBA Finals and note, I won't say much on the finals because I do not think we're seeing anything really unexpected. I can get into the plays that were run on both teams, the strategies being used, the performances of players, etc. But ultimately, it gets to this. From my perspective, I see the Nuggets as winning the series. And I said that despite historically being a bigger fan of Miami than Denver. Okay? I never thought Denver would have swept the Heat, and Miami already took game one. Well, not game one, they took one game already. But is it possible for them to take another game? Sure. But I'm not in the mood of using my predictive abilities today. Whether Miami takes another game or not, the final result will be a championship for the Nuggets. You know, I know it takes a bit out of the fun of the process, but I guess that's how it is today. And for those who are criticizing Joker about his MVP wins, claiming that his status is not deserved because he has not won a ring, what will they pivot to now so that they could criticize him? And I understand that the way I make the statement, it sounds like, the Nuggets has already won the series, but that just shows how confident I am in the Nuggets winning the series. Okay, so let's get to the Scottie Pippen comments because that's originally why I created this podcast. So Scottie Pippen recently made comments that Michael Jordan was a terrible player. People forgot who he was, that is who Michael Jordan was, and that he was a one-on-one player. He was losing, and it is when he, Scottie Pippen, got to the Bulls, they started winning. And now, that they won, and they won quite a bit. Everyone forgot. I'm not surprised by the backlash Scottie Pippen got for his statements. In response, persons bring up the number of championships that MJ won, his MVPs, his finals MVPs, scoring titles, going 6 for 6, being a former defensive player of the year, and so forth. They are correct. Michael Jordan got all of that. His resume certainly shows it. But this is what I will say. It's nice persons bring up these things, but that is not what the argument is about here. No one is arguing that Michael Jordan is not accomplished. It is whether MJ is a terrible player. Now, before I go on and people think that I'm bashing MJ, well, actually, they will think that anyway. Let me say this. Michael Jordan is one of my favorite players of all time. There was no bigger fan of MJ during his championship runs than me. But as I will always do, I will put my feelings aside. This is not an emotional response like most analysts out there do. I will be objective in my comments. And I have the memory of history on my side, live history. So it is not only these TV reporters with their memory crew that knows the past. I will start here, and I'll be devil's advocate a little bit. Who do you know, if they're looking for a player that represents team basketball, will have Michael Jordan at the tip of their tongue. No one that I personally know of. Okay. Do I think Michael Jordan is a terrible player? No, I don't think Michael Jordan is a terrible player. In fact, I think he's one of the greatest players to ever play the game. Persons are also saying, you know, in their criticism of Scotty, that he sounds envious and bitter. I partially do not agree with that statement. I say partially because I agree with the bitter part, but what I believe is that he sounds resentful and bitter as opposed to envious and bitter. Now, of course, I'll not touch on all the points that justify why I say resentful and bitter as opposed to envious. Remember when he was a player for the Bulls negotiating his contract, okay, negotiating his salary, there was a feeling that, not just a feeling, there were rumblings and comments that were being made that he thought MJ could have supported him better so that he could have gotten a better salary. If you recall, you know, the size of his salary compared to other players, compared to Michael Jordan in himself. And it's something, a conversation you see players getting more involved in the signing and the salaries of other players they want to play with. That was not a big thing back then, but Scottie Pippen always felt that MJ, could have assisted in him getting a bigger salary. So there was some resentfulness there. That said, I mean, I could easily rebut my own self by saying Scottie Pippen was quick to accept the salary because, you know, he wanted to ensure that he had a contract. Persons who remember back then certainly remember, the negotiations. But that is one reason for, being somewhat resentful and bitter. But also, when you think of how much Scottie Pippen contributed to the success of the Bulls, how much he sacrificed as a player in himself. And when people talk about the Bulls, those championship years, they speak about Michael Jordan, and he only gets a small mention in there. You know, they don't talk about Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen the way Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen should be spoken about. And of course, the aura around Michael Jordan, it kind of takes away from Scottie Pippen, is almost like an afterthought. But the thing that makes it resentful is that when you couple that with, and I'll go to the most recent event, the Last Dance, where Michael Jordan portrays Scottie Pippen as a bad teammate, when we all know what Scottie Pippen meant to the Bulls back then yeah, Scottie Pippen, um, he's resentful and he's bitter about those things. Okay, but this is the thing: none of these things contribute to whether Michael Jordan is a terrible player or not. So if we go back to that terrible player comment, this is where I don't think Scottie Pippen, at least based on his statements, is wrong. I say that because Scottie Pippen qualified his statement by saying Michael Jordan was a terrible player. He was a one-on-one player. And that is where you get how Scottie Pippen defines, okay, what a terrible player is. I'm not saying I agree with his definition, but that's his definition. So when persons go off, they're ignoring the full statement. Now the question is, was MJ a one-on-one player, as Scottie Pippen says? And I would say yes, mostly he was. If you analyze his game throughout his career, okay, the majority of it was him going one on one. All right, and nothing in my opinion says there is something wrong with that. Nothing, if that is what is required for the team to win, then that's what you do. And of course, Jordan could have done that one-on-one thing and be successful because he had a co-star by the very same Scottie Pippen. All right. And if persons remember, other players, you know, if you infuriate MJ or you make certain statements about him, he would somewhat embarrass you because of the amount of one-on-one he would be playing. So he could easily target you and make you kind of look foolish. Okay, so let's go a little further in this. I'm sure persons remember, similar to Kobe who patterned his game after Jordan, there were times in Michael Jordan's career when, to some degree, he was looked at as a ball hog. And persons who remember back then remember that. People will also remember this. After the first Dream Team, where they blew the competition away, a couple Dream Teams later, we saw the world teams catching up to the US at the Olympics. And there was not just rumblings, there was lots of talk of people criticizing US basketball for being too much of a one-on-one game and less of a team game. And what were they saying specifically then? I'm sure persons could remember. And I don't need to go back and look. I mean, persons could easily go back and at least I hope. I've not checked. But persons could I'm thinking they could easily go back and get comments where persons were saying Michael Jordan spoiled basketball for the US because everybody wanted to play one-on-one like Michael Jordan. Okay? So when Scottie Pippen said Michael Jordan was a one-on-one player, he's not wrong in his statement. Okay? So we can go on with the multitude of times that Jordan is described in the way that Scottie Pippen said. Okay? But there was no uproar about it then when those statements was being made. But now people criticize Scottie for his statements. Okay? And I cannot go along with them because, all they're focusing on is the terrible player part and not the qualification that comes with it. Okay, there are many ways to win in the league as a team player or as a one-on-one player. We saw Magic Johnson's game. We saw Steph Curry's game. We saw Michael Jordan game. Okay, I could go on with other players. There are different types of players and different ways to win. Michael Jordan was more one-on-one, and there's no getting away from that. Okay, remember Allen Iverson, who was also a one-on-one player? That one year when the Sixers went to the NBA Finals. Prior to the All-Star game, the team was not very good, but in the All-Star, management saw what Dikembe Mutombo was bringing to the team. And after the All-Star game, they traded for him. And we saw, the rise of the Sixers in that year that propelled them all the way to the finals. Of course, losing to the Lakers 4-1. They won the first game and then lost the next four. Okay? And what that points to is having the right players around you. Not whether you're a one-on-one player or you're a team player, is having the right composition of the team. Okay? If Scottie Pippen believes that Jordan is a terrible player based on him being a one-on-one player, then so be it. That's his opinion. But again, that's his definition of what a terrible player is. And also, do not forget that Scottie Pippen himself, on multiple occasions, said if he has to play with any other player, who is he going to select? Scottie Pippen said Michael Jordan. Because even in him describing Michael Jordan as a player, he recognized that if Scottie Pippen he himself, adjusts his game, he recognizes that he could win championships with him. It has been done. He know that that is a formula that could win. But I guess in the process, he may be thinking, well, yep, he could win, but is Michael Jordan a terrible player? That's his thinking. I'm not saying I agree with it, but that's Scottie Pippen's thinking. Let me just add one thing. Okay, Scottie Pippen said that Jordan didn't win before him, and I want to just touch on that because that's was part of the statement. Okay, he said that Jordan didn't win before him, and he's not wrong with that either. Okay, Jordan only won with him at his side, with Scottie at his side. Even Michael Jordan himself admitted to that. Jordan said, if Scottie he didn't have Scottie at his side, he don't think he would have won as much. So I again, I don't think there's nothing false about that statement from Scottie Pippen. Okay, um, when you get okay to play with someone of that caliber, um, you you sometimes get overshadowed as Scottie Pippen did, and um, that's some of what happened to Scottie in that case. So, but I mean, his opinions is his opinions, and this is let me just draw this little bit of analogy here. If someone is standing in the doorway, right, and the person is blocking persons from being able to pass. When you get to that person and you say, "Get out of the way," how will persons take what you said compared to if you said, "Excuse me"? Neither statement is wrong, but persons will not like the first statement. Okay, and you see persons based on what Scottie Pippen said, based on the way he said it, and especially about who he said it, um, they will not. He will get backlash on that, and the reason is because they did not focus on his qualification, on his definition. So if we are working based simply on Scottie Pippen's definition of a terrible player, then Scottie Pippen is not wrong. Hoopinhoops.com